My name is Dan Hoolihan. I'm here to interview Joe Fischer, the CEO and I guess and president or founder of Fischer Custom Communications. This is the second year in a row we've done this. Last year we asked Joe to talk about his father and some of his accomplishments. And this year we've decided to ask Joe about himself and some of his accomplishments. So Joe, I'd like to maybe ask you to just sort of start back when you first got involved with industry, EMC, and let it roll.
Okay. Well, it was really a strange way to start engineering. I had graduated from San Diego State. I was a full-time beach lifeguard. I was up to become a lieutenant, and which was a pay grade up. And interestingly enough, I decided I would also apply to the U.S. Navy Electronics Laboratory on Point Loma in San Diego. And I decided I'd take that, even though I took a $30 a month cut from being a lifeguard.
So how much money were you making as a lifeguard?
About $350 a month.
Hey, not too bad.
And I went down to $330 to become a GS5 electronic scientist. At any rate, the interesting part was how I selected the discipline that I finally wanted to go into. They decided to take me around to the various laboratories in Point Loma and said, would you like to stay here, or would you like to work on this? And turns out that they eventually took me to a place called the Antenna Laboratory. And it just so happened to be overlooking the ocean.
Ooh.
And I said to myself, this is a one way for me to get over my anxiety about leaving the beach. Because here I am, getting paid for it, a little less than when I was a guard, but I became an antenna engineer, which after a very short time, General Dynamics made me an offer I couldn't refuse because they paid me twice as much money. And I became
that's a big boost. That's a big pay increase.
It was an antenna engineer, and one day we're working on the Atlas missile. My boss said, hey, we've got a field here, an outfit that's doing what they call radio interference studies. I want you to, we don't want them around here anymore. You go down and find out what this electromagnetic interference stuff is all about. And 60 years later, I'm still working at it.
So you started on the Atlas missile?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
I actually started on the F-102 fighter aircraft.
Oh, okay.
And I started on some bombers that consolidated. It was still, Convair was still consolidated Vol-T at the time.
B-58 maybe, or what were you working on?
I was on the B-58.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you went from bombers and rockets to instrumentation, or how did that happen?
Pretty much actually working on the systems and how much interference they were displaying, as well as their susceptibility. So we were fixing problems as we went along.
So where did Xerox come in? Where did that come in your career?
Xerox came in at near the end of my career.
Oh, near the end.
So yeah.
Okay.
No, I went that right after General Dynamics. A guy named Fred Nichols, former. He had started a company called Genestron, and he used to visit me at General Dynamics. And he said one day, he said, how'd you like to come up and be my chief engineer?
Ooh.
So that was an offer I couldn't refuse.
No kidding. So you came up to L.A.
I came up to L.A. And that's how I got further in depth into the EMC world.
Were you working for Fred when he spun off LMI, or was that too late?
No,
later?
that was that was too late.
Too late.
Yeah, right. I was already he said he was going to do that, and so I made a move to become the engineering manager at Litton Industries, and I was the engineer in charge of the DD-963 Spruance class destroyer,
wow,
which I spent 7 years on, making sure that the EMC was under control.
So when did you start Fischer Custom Communications, and is that after Litton? Or?
That was when I went to Litton. I also started Fischer Custom Communications.
First and second shift, huh?
Second shift, and I was straight up with Litton. I told them what I was doing. They said fine, yeah, but it was also the president of the EMC Society at that time, so Litton loved that.
So you were a little busy.
I was. I used to go back to Crystal City about twice a year to give them presentations on the status of the DD-963, which turned out to be an extremely successful destroyer program of 27 destroyers, which are still in force 30 years later.
Yeah, that's something to be proud of. Yeah. Well, tell us a little bit about the start of FCC. How did you pick your first product, or what kind of decision tree did you go through there?
Was that decision had already almost been preordained too, because while back at General Dynamics, Herb Martel and I had written a proposal to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base to develop current probes to go from up. They were typically at that era of about 1958. They were out. Stoddard Aircraft had developed current probes up to about 150, 200 megahertz. And so Wright-Patterson Air Force Base wanted current probes to be developed up to 1 gigahertz.
Oh,
so Herb and I did that process, and when I left General Dynamics, why I decided I'd put that into motion and develop it more, and that's how Fischer Custom Communications got started, by building current probes.
So did you get a patent on that, or
no, there was no patent.
Just an extension of the current technology or something?
Yes. Yeah. So we now have developed probes up to 7 gigahertz now. So we've moved it on. But at the same time, it was very interesting because I had a lot of EMP scare activities were going on in the 1960s, and so I had a good friend that was in civil defense and said, can you build us EMP protection devices? And that's how we started our Spike Guard line of products.
Okay.
So we had a very willing and desired customer in the civil defense organization.
Well, that helps. That helps.
We were putting Spike Guards in every FM radio and transmitter sites that they could find.
So as FCC grew and you did more design work, did you? How many patents did you end up with?
We have about 6 or 7 patents at this point in time.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's kept moving right along, and the engineering staff that we have now is quite competent in continuing the whole concept of developing bigger and better stuff.
Are you still doing some engineering though? Still doing some?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
I watch out over our over voltage protection devices.
Fantastic. Anything else you'd like to say about FCC or the latter part of your career here?
No, the latter part, as I said earlier, at our luncheon today, I said I was just glad to be alive. So I would say that the good Lord's blessed me with living as long as I have. That's about as much as I can say.
That's fantastic, Joe. We've been interviewing Joe Fischer, the head of Fischer Custom Communications and former president of the EMC Society from the early 1980s or earlier than that?
1970.
1970, okay, thank you.
I was the 13th president.
No, there you go.
It wasn't
Okay.
an unlucky number.
No, not at all. Well, we felt lucky to have you as president, so
Thank you.
thanks for the interview, Joe.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.